Well, I'm excited to talk to you tonight. There's an awful lot I would love to say in this lesson. He told me that there's not a necessary schedule, that we're all scheduled a little bit. So I'm really passionate about talking about families. I think it's so important for us to really focus and be intentional with our families. That's a word that you hear people use a lot, but when I'm saying that, I just mean that it's something we should think about and make intentional decisions about to help our family be strong. The title of this lesson is how nurturing leads to peace, or how nurturing can bring peace. And before we start it though, whenever you speak about families, you really don't know, I don't know your family dynamic. I mean, looking at you now, I really would not know, maybe this person's a widow, or maybe they're not married, or maybe they're divorced, or you just don't know. So it's hard to really speak in a way that you don't want to, I don't know the right way to say, leave someone out, or maybe say something that, maybe obviously I wouldn't want to be hurtful in what I would say, or bring up bad, ideas. And obviously I don't know what it's like to be divorced or widowed. And so it's always hard. I always kind of feel like I don't know, how to go about doing this sometimes. But here's what I finally figured out. It doesn't matter if you're not married yet and you want to be, or you're not sure if you want to be. It doesn't matter if you're divorced, or if you're widowed, or if you've been married and are in a marriage, or if you've been married a long time. And the same would be true with raising children, because some of this stuff will be about marriage, some will be about parenting. And you might not have children, or you may have had children, and you may be older and a grandparent, or whatever the situation might be. But to me, what I figured out is that it's always beneficial for us to talk about families, because no matter what place you're in, there are families who need you, and you may have a family one day. Or so, like in an instance where if you're in a marriage seminar or a marriage retreat, I guess it would be understandable to feel like, I don't even know if I need to be here. I don't know what I'm going to gain from this. But if that's your case, and maybe you still have children, well, then you have a really good need to be there, because you can teach your children, principles. So it's the same thing with anything we might discuss this weekend, is that you can teach others, a friend, a sister, your children, your grandchildren, other families in the congregation can benefit from people like us having more of what you might call a collective memory about what a good, strong family needs, and what it takes to get there. And also, like Adam has said, he probably said that. I'll just give you a secret here. He probably said that because I've had a little trepidation doing these, because I know how imperfect we are, and I feel awkward because I don't want it to come out like, okay, let me show you how to have a good family, because I wish somebody would tell me. We went to polishing the pulpit, and I know this girl. I met her the first time I know that I've ever met this girl was in a bathroom, and we just, hi, how are you? And she was trying to be friendly because we have all these name tags on, and she said, oh, we talked a little bit. And what I remember about our first meeting was her saying, I told Bob, whoever her husband's saying, well, we need to come to PTP, and that's an attitude I've had before. Like, well, we sure need something, to help our family. So that's one reason we like to do these. We feel like it helps us too, and we feel like it helps all families for us all to be talking about. We don't want to, families are in crisis. I think that's not an overstatement. They're in crisis in our country. I feel like we're at a place where people don't know what they ought to do in a family. They don't know how to be a parent. What is right? What should we do? Should we say this to our kids, or should we say that? Should we let them do this And especially with the internet, social media, you can find every answer out there, and you're just still that much more confused because no one can tell you. So what we have to do is remember to go to God's Word. That's how we're going to know what to do for our families if we want them to be strong. So just keep all that in mind. Now, nurturing leading to peace. I like to just define the terms. Nurture, most of us would know this, but nurturing, it just means to rear or to bring up, to make grow, to feed or to fatten or to nourish. So when you're talking about, you're just making something healthy. Maybe look at it that way. You're making something healthy. If you're nurturing, you're making something healthy. And peace means, a lot of times we'll think peace is just having no conflict, but that's not what peace is. But peace is just, it can mean, being calm in conflict, which certainly might apply to this, but it also can mean there's part of a word in Hebrew that actually means like oneness, and it makes sense if you think about peace. Meaning, if you're peaceful, you can be whole or complete. Because one reason you can be calm during conflict is that there's something that you have about yourself that you understand and you can trust. So when Christ, is the Prince of Peace, and he says, "I'll bring peace into the world," he's really talking more about oneness and completeness that we need to be striving for toward God. So when I'm thinking of nurturing, bringing peace, what I'm thinking of is how do we make healthy, or how can doing things that make a family healthy and doing all the things that might require actually make us whole and complete for ourselves, our families, our husbands, our children. And so that's kind of where all these thoughts are coming from. And so we're just going to talk about specifically nurturing our husbands and then nurturing our children. And that's what we'll have time for tonight. So, and there are many different ways we're going to nurture. That's what we're going to focus on. So the first thing is nurturing our husbands. Now, if this, I kept asking Adam, he said this is more like a family seminar. Sometimes you have marriage seminars. Sometimes there's parenting seminars. This is family. So this really obviously would be true for this particular, these set of lessons. But, even if you're just talking about parenting, nurturing your husband is still important, because the most important thing you can do for your children and your family is to have a strong relationship with your husband and to take care of him. Because it's easy, it's really easy, when the children come along to just kind of feel like, well, he can fend for himself. And we can be guilty of having that attitude, like we just don't think about him. But you have to remember that even though he can take care of himself, but so can you. But you still like somebody doing things for you, right? And you also need to think about and especially if you're younger and you have these young children, that there will come a time when they won't. And this is sad because I have one that's out of the house. I have one that's, next year will be going off to school. And so I'm thinking, all these years I heard people say this, but it's true. One of these years, they're not going to be there. It's going to be you and your husband. You had a family. Your family was you and your husband before those children. It's going to be you and your husband after those children. So we have to really think about still taking care of him. Somebody said earlier, Adam and I, we were talking about an anniversary trip we made this last summer, 25 years. And one of the things he said that cracked me up, he said, well, one of the things on this trip that I figured out, I'm like, oh yeah? He said, I think we're still going to like each other after the kids are, sometimes you just have to have that reckoning, it's normal to be busy and have all that stuff going on, but it was funny and cute because it's like, we kind of like still being together, right? But it's, that's so important to feel like you still know your spouse after children. And so how do we do that? How do we nurture him? And of course, there are three topics or categories. One is we need to nurture him physically. Nurture his physical self. Take care of his physical needs. And sometimes in our modern enlightened society, people will make light of that, but I don't care, because I still think that God knows what he's talking about when he put women more in the role of taking care of the home. I mean, that's more specifically given to women than it ever was to men. I think there's probably something to that. Women, by our nature, are just better nurturers. We are good at this. And so even, what did Eve, one of the first things you read about Eve, what was she doing? Looking for food, right? She's looking and judging the food. As actually was when she judged that fruit of knowledge of good and evil because it looked good. She's out looking for food to eat for her and Adam. So I think it's natural for us, and it's okay for us to say, it's okay. We need to take care of his physical needs. Ephesians 5 tells us he's the head of our family. He's the head of us. He's the head of our family. And so why wouldn't we want to take care of him? Why would we want, and it may be true that your husband is a leader in the church. So you're taking care of him is actually building him up, even physically, taking care of his health or whatever it may be, so that he can be a better leader. So you're not just benefiting a person, you're benefiting the church even. And you're certainly benefiting your children. If you're taking good care of your husband, he's going to be a better dad. He's going to be a better husband, and he can be a better leader. And so there's just so many benefits to it. So don't make light of making sure that, his needs are taken care of. Not that, he's can't do things for himself. It's not about that. It's just about you taking on that role and being making sure that things are done, making sure that there's a home, nice home, and your food and the clothes and all of that. We used to teach that so much, and now it's almost like people are scared to teach that, we actually might need to be responsible for that laundry. Yes, we need to make sure our homes are running smoothly, so people are taken care of. That's a part of being a wife and a mother. I remember talking, when we went on a trip a couple years ago to Washington, D.C., we came back down and wanted to stop in Williamsburg. So we're there, and Martha Washington comes out. She's doing this role play thing, and I loved it. She's talking about during the Revolutionary War how her husband, George, was up north somewhere. I don't remember where, but and she wasn't with him. But he wanted her to come, but she didn't really know her place of what to do. In the talk, she really paints this picture about her being up there with the soldiers and with seeing what they did. And she said, "Here's what I found out. My husband, who was leading an army, a very ragtag kind of army, the Revolutionary Continental Army it was just a bunch of regular old guys, that were fighting for their freedom, and so they weren't professional soldiers at all." And so she said that we get up there, she got up there, and I'm noticing that he's meeting with diplomats from other countries, very high up people coming, and they're getting to know him, and they're trying to figure out, do we need to support this harebrained idea of, rebelling against Great Britain? You may just imagine a French diplomat coming over here to talk to, who are you now, George? Who, and what is this all about over here? I know that's probably not how it happened, but anyway. So she said, but what I learned is that the best thing I could do for him is to make him look good. So it was because of Martha Washington that when you came into George Washington's tent, he's not there in an old ratty uniform. He looked sharp because she made that happen. She made sure his officers, when they were sitting at the table, that they looked sharp. And she made sure that when they served that dinner, that it was good food. And not that she was doing all of it, but she was the leader in gathering, trying to get support for that army and the money to generate. And that was a part of it. She said, when people are there and you're serving them on silver tea sets, that they look important, and they're going to take my husband more seriously with the help and the money that they could give him and the support that they could give him. And so it made me think that should be something we should strive for. We should want our husbands to look good. I'm not just talking about their physical looks, but just when somebody thinks about her husband, they should have good thoughts. And even in Proverbs chapter 31, one of the reasons she was praised is because her husband was praised. She was so good that people praised him in the gates. Like they knew him partly because of how good she was. So we can do the same thing when it comes to, men might not, and they don't notice, they don't. Like, they're not going to notice details. They're not going to notice if that shirt's worn out and you cringe every time they want to wear it, and you're scared that, like, is this anybody but me? Like, I don't want to throw this favorite shirt away, but he loves that thing and all that kind of stuff. But what they do, they don't notice those things and they don't care, but what matters to them is how people feel about them and the respect they get from other people. That's important to men. And so what things we can do to help them look good or our homes look good, that actually means more than they're probably ever going to say, because they know, even if it's subconsciously, that people are actually thinking well of them, and they can feel that pride that is healthy for them. A healthy kind of pride. Our son used to say, I have pride, but just a little bit. Like he knew that you shouldn't have a lot of pride, but it's okay. That pride, a healthy amount of that's okay. And so anyway, so let's just be sure that we are not neglecting just the physical needs. And obviously this is awkward always, but part of that, yes, is your, sexual relationship with your husband. I think that's probably, if we could say things are in crisis, one of the reasons our families is that sexual relations are so messed up, and what is intended for marriage is mocked at in marriage and looked down on in marriage, and it's glorified outside of marriage. That's just backwards. It's messed up. And so what we need to do is be able to bring that to our family, to our relationship with our husband, and put it where God wanted it. And He wants you to have a healthy relationship, healthy sexual relationship with your husband. And we're all different ages here, different stages of marriage, even if we're all married. And I know that there's different seasons in that. You have the honeymoon stage, but then there's the kids coming along, and then the bigger kids, and that's a whole different stage. How to manage that with bigger kids. And then there's the time after the kids are gone, which I'm not there yet. But just thinking about what I've noticed, sadly, is that when we've had marriage seminars or marriage retreats where we kind of were in charge of, especially even for preachers. It was like a preacher's marriage retreat that we had done for a few years. And that came up all the time, how much they were struggling. And these were good, good families, It came up, how much they struggled. And it was from whatever reason to another. It could be because some serious thing like trauma in their past that they could not move past, like some kind of sexual abuse that they had endured or whatever. But it also sometimes it's just hard for some women because of how messed up society is about sex and all of that. So I would say just look for those things in this particular area that are hindrances, and it's worth whatever you need to do to figure out what's going on. It could be something as simple as that you hear moms saying, I'm touched out, like, babies have been sitting in my lap all day long, and I just, please, I don't want anybody coming near me. I just need, and we all have that feeling, but you can't let that hinder your marriage. Somehow figure it out. Like maybe after dinner, after we clean up, if you can just entertain for a few minutes, I'm going to go get a shower, and I'm going to, maybe we don't need to put on our old favorite ratty pajamas or whatever. Just something that makes you feel more feminine, and just work on that. Maybe it is true sometimes how we dress affects how we feel, and it's real easy. And I've been there with moms, like we're not going anywhere anyway, so we don't really think about it. But then that might come down, it might hurt us at the end of the day when your husband wants a wife and you're just feeling like a mom, and that's hard. I mean, it's really hard. So sometimes you have to figure out what to do to feel like a wife and put that as important. And so there's all kinds of things. Obviously, if there's sometimes problems are just physical, and maybe worth having an awkward conversation with your doctor. I've had to have one before, and figure out what's going on. And sometimes it's as simple as some hormone imbalance that's just not right, and that's good for you anyway to figure out that that's going on. And it can certainly help with this particular relationship too. So nurture physically. And also we need to nurture our husbands spiritually. So we need to pray for him. We need to pray for his strength spiritually. No one can help him like God can. God can help him more than you can. So pray to God for your husband. Pray that he's strong. We need strong men in the church. We need strong men in our families and in our country. I mean, we will benefit from strong men. And if we're not careful, we're going to listen too much to the common world who says that if a man is strong, that somehow means he's toxic. That's just ridiculous. We need strong men. They're not toxic just because they're strong and they want to be leaders. God made them to be leaders. He made them to be the leaders of the home. He's commanded it. So don't make it harder for him. Let him lead. Let him lead. Don't be afraid about submission. It's a command. If you look at Ephesians 5, it is word as clear as day that a wife should submit to her husband. We are all supposed to submit to each other in the family of God, but there is a specific command to submit to your husband for wives. It's as clear as it can be. We cannot let the world say, well, that's just not. No, we've got to do that. We've got to figure out, for one, we need to see the beauty in it, because the beauty in submission is really painting the picture of the church to Christ. The church does not tell Christ what to do, how to do it, and gripe at every little thing he says for the church to do. That is not what the picture is we need to paint. We need to submit to our husbands because he is supposed to be the picture of Christ to the world, and we are supposed to be the picture of the church to the world. You know, it's every time you talk about these relationships with men and women, you'll hear someone say that's a cultural thing, and I'm saying that it's not, because every time you talk about the difference of men and women in the Bible, it's always sent right back to the creation order, that God made man first, and then he made a woman. So that doesn't change because of culture. That's just, God could have made a woman first. He didn't, you know, and we have to be okay with our role. You know, in Philippians chapter 2, Christ, we're commanded to be, we're supposed to humble ourselves, and we're supposed to have the mind of Christ. And that's for everybody. But it's hard to be humble sometimes. And maybe sometimes the submission thing is so hard because anyone, all of us, men and women, have a hard time humbling ourselves. But the picture the ultimate picture of humility there in Philippians chapter 2 is Jesus. How he didn't, the word is he didn't think equality, which is a dangerous word to use around here, you know, but he didn't think equality was something he should be grasping at. And so I think about that relation with men and women and how hard it is and why it is, because, you know, Jesus didn't say, well, I'm a part of the Godhead too. I mean, he was there at creation. He was there saying, let us create man in our image. It was his, you know, the Bible says by him. John chapter 1 says by Jesus, by the Word. Who is Jesus? Was the world created? But he didn't say, well, I'm important too. And he didn't hold on to that equality. He came as a servant and as a man to this world. And so if we truly want to be an example of humility, we can think that Jesus did the same thing. And so we don't have to think that that's a bad thing or that we're lowering ourselves. You know, submission anyway is just a military term, and it's based on rank. It's based on who, you know, you can have two men, and I didn't write this down. This is probably dangerous to try. You can have two men in military, and they might argue about one thing or the other, but you know who gets the final say? Whoever outranks the other one. I mean, that's just how it is. They may be smart, they're both smart, but there is a rank that they have to honor. They may be equals in every sense. In the experience, the lower ranked person might have more experience in an area, but at the end of the day, they both know, I outrank you, so if we don't agree, the rank comes first. That's really what submission is. It's not about, you know, women don't understand this. Women, we all have I think God made us with our special interests and our special strengths and everything, but at the end of the day, there has to be some kind of person in charge or person who is ranking over this one. And the Bible teaches us that Christ is the head of the husband and the husband is the head of the wife. And that's a ranking system with, that's maybe not a good way to say that. That's why I said I don't know if I need to say this, but it is really, really what it comes down to. And you can really nurture him spiritually by letting him in that role, letting him do his part of that role too. So also we need to nurture him emotionally. We should respect him. That nurtures him emotionally and spiritually, but specifically emotionally, because our husbands are different. Men are different. And so I read a book years ago. It's called Love and Respect by Everson Eggridge. And in that book, he just really, it's almost really redundant. But the thing is that overall, men really desire respect more. And overall, women really desire love more. Like, this is how we relate to each other. That they would choose respect any day over someone, self-serving them, or whatever. And he says, like in Ephesians 5, that's one thing that jumps out to him, is that men are commanded to agape or love their wives. And it's the women who are said, and she should see that she respects her husband. And so maybe God knows that that's how he made us, that they do. Respect is very important. Not to say that we shouldn't love or that he shouldn't respect us, but just what that means and how important it is. And a lot of times we're guilty of saying, well, respect, is earned. But I don't think we would ever we would just be livid if our husband never said, well, I love you, but sometimes you burn my favorite food, and then sometimes you're kind of grouchy, and so maybe if you want me to love you more, maybe you should act a little bit better, and I might love you. We would say, what? You should love me because I'm your wife. We should respect our husbands because he's our husband. It's love and respect. They're not feelings. It's a choice. It's a decision you make. You decide to love someone. And that means you put their needs first. It's not a feeling, because feelings fade. But respect is the same way. Respect isn't a feeling like, oh, look how good he is. He's always doing this for our family, and he treats me and the kids so well, and so I respect him. Well, we should respect him because we decide he's my husband. I'll never understand why women, and I'll pick on us, I guess, why we want to bash our husbands all the time, because sometimes if you see it, it makes you, if you start looking at it this way, it'll be hard to watch too, because I'm thinking, well, you married him, so if he's so bad, what are you saying about you? I chose this loser over here. Can you believe what he did? So let's just build him up, talk him up, and lift him up physically and spiritually and emotionally, and I think our family will be stronger. And so now we'll talk about children, because this is part of, if you're a wife or a mother, it's very often and natural for there also to be children. So we should nurture them in the same ways. We're going to talk about 3 categories again with this, but physically, and this is usually pretty easy. For whatever reason, it's natural, I guess. We usually are pretty good at taking care of our kids. We take care of them and make sure they eat right. We make sure they, have the things they need. But it's still important for them, if it's something you struggle with, to just remember that when you're making them strong, you're making your family strong. And kids thrive usually with care and structure and routine and all of those things that are sometimes very hard to get done. So it's just a matter of us knowing the importance of it sometimes. I know it helps me to sometimes sit back and think about how important it is. One specific thing I'll mention is family dinners. These statistics, and I'm not sure exactly how old they are. They're not that old though, and I'm sure that these are as true as they ever were. But 45% of children who have eaten or used to family dinners consistently are 45% less likely to have tried alcohol. And they're also 71% consider talking or listening the best part of the dinner. So it doesn't have to be fancy food or, fancy tableware, anything like that, but just the talking, the family togetherness is what's so important to them. And they have better vocabularies. And this study said even almost better than reading aloud to them, which is huge if you are an education major. Like, it's huge to know that you can affect their vocabulary. And especially that's true if you and your husband are communicating on an adult level that they can hear instead of baby talking to everybody. So that's important to remember. So, you and your husband should lead that conversation. And it benefits your family. Every statistic I ever see about that says the same thing, that benefits kids. We have our nights where we in the living room watching a movie. We do that on the weekends more. But we also have tried for a long time to sit down together to eat. And, I think, and this is me, I'm not good at this, but I think it's better and it won't hurt anybody for us to actually bring back a more civilized dinner. Like, I think it's good to put the tablecloth on there, to set the table and have your children know how to function. A lot of people feel so uncomfortable in that because they've never experienced it. So, I don't have to have the fancy china, but just your regular dishes with a napkin and your fork and your knife, and showing them how to use those things when they're when they're younger. It won't hurt. It definitely will not hurt your kids or your family to have civilized dinners several times a week. I don't want to say few, but several times a week. And also, we're going to talk about nurturing spiritually. Now, this is a big one. I said it's easy usually to nurture your children physically. It's just something we do. It seems to be easier to get that done, but I think one of the most lacking things is nurturing your children spiritually. We could probably spend a whole lesson on this, but we have to give our children healthy doses of Bible teaching. We cannot leave it up to the church in the Sunday school program. I mean, for one, that's not a lot of time, but for two, it depends on where you are if it's a good Bible school program. I mean, I've been to other churches and sometimes they're not that great, So you don't need to depend. If you have children, it's your job, you and your husband together, to teach them spiritual things. They need to hear it. They need to be not just ever so often. It needs to be a big part of your family to discuss their spiritual lives, for them to know about the Bible. And there again, it depends on where you are. If your kids are little, I would say this would be fairly easy and you should just start. Just make the start. But, make sure get a good old Bible storybook and just make that be something you read it to them every night so they're familiar with, most kids will know about Noah maybe, but I've taught children in class who are visitors, I will say that, come in with their grandma after, some family thing happened and she brings them to church or something like that. And I'm not exaggerating when I just off the cuff said, well, and you've heard about how Jesus died on the cross for us. And I could see plain as day in their little faces, they did not know what I was talking about. So someone has not even told them Jesus died for us, for our sins. Think about growing up in a world where you don't have that hope of going to heaven. When this world is all they know, what does the verse say? If hope in this world is all we have, we're like most men, most miserable, something like that. I'm not quoting it right, I know, but we have to be that for our children. We need to be giving them a Bible education at home. And so it doesn't have to be fancy, but just a Bible story if they're little. And read, every night. Maybe make that a routine you have in your family. There's great books if your kids are a little bit older, or if you feel like, I would like to do that, but I'm not sure I know. Like, it happens, So break that cycle. And there's good books that one of them is called 4,000 Years in 13 Weeks. And it's just like an overview of the Old Testament. And so it's like a little 13 class, with those old 13 chapter class books, but that would be an amazing resource to have for yourself and for kids who are maybe a little bit older. And then there's just also one that says it's 27 books in 13 weeks, so it's about the New Testament. And so just having a good basic overview, a book, and those are just two good examples of an overview of the Bible, at least can help you understand, the big picture of the Bible. There's another book that I'm actually studying through right now called 15 Periods of Bible History, and it's actually written for younger people or for people who don't know a lot about the Bible, like maybe someone you're studying with. Yes.
You gotta slow down, I can't write that fast.
Sorry.
What was the first book?
4,000 years and
4,000
Mhm.
years
in 13 weeks.
in 13 weeks, okay,
And the other one is 27 books.
okay.
And Sue Crabtree is the author of both of those books. And if you're writing down specific sources, the storybook that I love is Eagermeyer's storybook. It's really nice. It's well done and thorough, and there's questions at the back for each little chapter. So it's an easy one if you wanted to, teach your kids about the Bible and the story to read and some questions, and you can learn right along with them, So,
What was the third one?
15 periods of Bible history. And that just takes through, 15 periods of history in the Bible. It's written by Andy Kaiser. And you can that book is easier found on their own publishing site, which is Riddle Creek Publishing. You can find the old version on Amazon, but I had trouble finding it. So on there was a revised version. So those are just some simple resources. There's all kinds. Obviously you need to be careful. There's all kinds of Bible resources out there, and most of them would probably contain false doctrine. But just these are written by members of the church. Obviously, things like the AP, Apologetics Press site is just huge. If you have not looked at that site, there's everything from small kids to teenagers to adult articles that you're like, I read one, I was trying to read one the other day, and I'm like, I don't know if I can understand this. It's written by a scientist, and I'm like, what? But then there's also nice little videos that anyone could say, oh, yeah, I can understand that. And they're about all kinds of scientific topics, apologetics, and they have books written for little kids about God making all the different kinds of animals. There's a book that is for all the wonders of creation, like all the little animals that have specific design qualities that just had to be because of God, not because they just developed into this. There's Truth Be Told is a book that would be good for your children to teach them about the era of evolution, and they present it in a very organized fashion with videos and even a few experiments that they can do. Anything like that you can do is beneficial, to your children. No one else, not anyone else's responsibility to teach them, but ours. So we just need to be doing it. And once you start, it's easier if you just start. If you have older kids, and I don't know, I'm not sure what ages of kids, but I did think when I've taught this lesson, I thought, what if there's someone there who's they really know they need to do better, but they've got that 15-year-old who's just going to look at them like they got two heads growing out. If they said, let's sit down for a Bible, time just for, us tonight. And I thought sometimes you have to just first maybe apologize that this is something I've not been doing, and it's my job as your mom, or do it together if you're married. Like, it's our job to teach you guys, and we've just maybe an apology is necessary. And other times though, you just have to try to explain that we know that that's the most important thing, and we've just been neglecting that, and we want to make a change. And they might surprise you, they might surprise you by wanting to learn more, especially if you can get someone to help you figure out a plan and do something that's not as abrasive as, you want to start slow and all of that. But I think it's good for us to be doing. I think it's not good, it's necessary. And we'll talk more about a little bit of more of this kind of stuff tomorrow, but also we need to nurture them emotionally. This will be our last point, but we need to nurture them mentally and emotionally. And this would be my rant, I think, about phones and social media. I'm not sure, the older my kids have gotten, And I'll tell you, we held off a while, but they had the first, like, these little phones that only worked on Wi-Fi, and so they just basically would have them if they went somewhere with them. They didn't know yet how to turn Wi-Fi on, we think. But, so it was just, call us when the youth bus is getting back close to home, that type of thing. But I think I would have waited longer. I just think that there are things that I'm at that age where I feel like I can say stuff that makes me almost sound like a conspiracy theorist or something, maybe. But really, I think those phones and that social media is nothing more than somebody out there, somebody else teaching your kid instead of you. I mean, I think that's fair to say. They are hearing so much more. And I mean, I'm 46, and so I didn't have any of this growing up. And I'm telling you, they're learning so much more. And I think the mistake for at least my generation is that we sometimes don't know how to parent any other way than how we were brought up, but we're living in such a different world, especially because of the technology. And so we don't know how to handle it because we don't want our kids to be weird, or especially, or like, well, they won't even be prepared because everything is technology now. We can kind of tell ourselves that, but I'm just not so sure that even the people who create these things, most of them don't let their kids use them. That should tell us all we need to know. But here we are when they're 10 or 11 saying, oh, you want a new phone for Christmas? And here, maybe we can fudge on your age so you can get on Facebook when you're 12 and stuff. And we're doing stuff like that. I mean, they don't do Facebook anymore, but so I think we just got to be so careful. They are hearing so much information, way more than the church is giving them, and way more than we as parents are giving them. They hear more from other people than they hear from us. And then we wonder why our kids grow up and they abandon everything that you've tried to teach them. I think we've heard people, we see that happening a lot. And so we need to make sure they are somehow figure it out. And it would almost be better for them to have just a flip phone and just call you when they needed you. Maybe they could, text a few friends or something like that. But I'm telling you, whatever you do, you should monitor heavily. And they're not perfect. You should definitely consider something like Covenant Eyes that will monitor bad sites. Like a third of the internet sites are pornography. And the average age that a child comes across pornography is 11 years old. That's pitiful. And while we think they're playing Roblox, you know how many girls, especially girls, are this is too that I've known, not just so I saw a random post shared by a bunch, million people, but like people I knew, or at least knew the people who knew them, and a child was lured into getting into a car with a guy or a man, going to their house and choosing to do it, not like abducted, choosing because they had met online, developed some kind of little relationship, and that's what their family thought. What their family thought was just, oh, we're handling it okay, and then this happens. Just this last week, I saw someone share about in Florida, an 11-year-old girl who committed suicide because she was on a phone, on a FaceTime with some boys, and I don't know if it was on the call or after, but somehow they started making fun of how she looked, and she killed herself just in a couple of days after that. And her mom was like, we always check, we did this, they thought they were doing everything right. So we just have to accept sometimes that as much as we might want them to be normal, that I'm really more and more thinking it is just ruining our children. I think it is. And I'm saying that as a mom who knows that if I had one kid specifically who I think would just explode if he couldn't talk to his friends and be buddies and share jokes and just be like, are you coming to the youth event, are you doing it, he's always that way. And so, but even with that, I'm saying I think we should it's just not worth it to have your kids be lost and even, murdered or lured into some terrible relationship just because we want them to be like everybody else. It's not worth it. So at least, keep the phones in your room at night. But kids can get secret phones that you don't even know about. So you have to be just diligent if you're going to let them have anything. And even if you say, no, we're not doing it in our family, well, look out. They'll probably, sometimes they try to figure out a way anyway. So, I don't know, but we do need to stop that constant stream no matter what. So definitely try everything you can do to get them off their phones as much as they are. And I think like the average child is on their phone. This sounds like even a low balling it, but like 7 hours outside of school even. That's crazy. And all it is, what girls are being taught? To hate their parents, that they're living in some kind of emotional, trauma. Boys are seeing a lot of pornography. Girls are, it's more emotional for them. So let's just not that like some people don't have, bad emotional abuse relationships, but there's a lot of that. Like, we don't want you trusting your parents. We don't want you listening to your parents. They don't know anything and they don't understand. That is what they're hearing all of the time. So we've got to be really careful. So let's just remember that these things are so important. They'll help your family be better and more at peace with each other, more at peace with God. And the more you can do and the more you just diligently try, you're going to be so much better, and it's going to help your husband and your children if you can do these things. Thank you.